Well, let's get the latest business news now. And Sally is here with us. Sally, oil prices have gone up again, and that's because people are worried about what's happening in the Middle East.
Yeah, absolutely. We're getting reports that there's a tanker on fire near the Strait of Hormuz today. So we'll have details on that for you. We're getting more news on day 6 of this conflict, with oil prices spiking again today after they stabilised on Wednesday. This on renewed fears about longer-term disruption to global supply of energy. So the focus for global markets and business is, of course, that narrow stretch of water at the end of the Arabian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz. On Wednesday, Iran's Revolutionary Guard said they have complete control over the vital waterway, the shipping route for 20% of the world's oil. Well, a short time ago, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards claimed that they had attacked a US oil tanker in the Persian Gulf, some hundreds of kilometres north of the Strait. An attack that we have yet to verify. Still, they say the vessel is on fire. Earlier this week, President Trump promised to use Navy ships to protect those going through that strait and provide insurance even. This is the time lapse of traffic levels in the strait. Now, this is just before the war began on Saturday. To give you a sense of how busy it was, around 80 ships would pass through daily. That traffic has all but halted, with just a couple of ships passing through on Wednesday. So some 329 oil vessels are now stuck in the Gulf, according to investment bank JP Morgan, with Iraq slashing crude production as it has no way of exporting at the moment. So today, earlier, we saw the price of Brent up sharply. It's currently up around 3%, trading just below $84 a barrel, now just off the level it hit when the war began. The head of the International Maritime Organization has been speaking to the BBC and warned the effects on shipping will be felt all over the world, not just in the Middle East.
What we're experiencing right now is that insurers are actually cancelling the insurance coverage or elevating the prices to astronomical levels when it comes to war coverage. Of course, all this will hamper the operations and in general will create additional strength into the economy of the world. So this will pass on the cost from one side to the other. This is something that it has a global ramification. It's not just what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, the US Energy Secretary has told Fox News the US Navy will start to escort oil tankers through the Strait as soon as it can, but they're currently focused on other things. Bob McNally, who's a former energy advisor to President George W. Bush and frequently testifies to Congress on energy issues, told us that securing the Strait of Hormuz is far from simple.
I think the U.S. military can make the Strait safe again. However, not as quickly as I think market participants and investors would expect or want. I think it's going to be a matter of weeks, not hours or days. And the real issue is not insurance per se. It is suppressing Iran's ability to make it unsafe for boats to go through that strait. Iran has a lot of small, asymmetric, layered types of munitions that are hard to find and kill. Fast attack boats, mines, drones, as we see. And the U.S. military, I think, is going to start prioritizing those as soon as it achieves air superiority. But that's the real question.
Well, the effects are already being felt in the US, with prices at the pumps rising as refiners face higher crude costs. The average cost of a gallon of regular gasoline hit almost $3.20 on Wednesday, according to the American Automobile Association, up more than 30 cents on a month ago. Diesel has seen its biggest jump since the Ukraine invasion, a gallon of diesel averaging over $4 for the first time in nearly 2 years. Diesel, of course, is used by truckers and farmers, so higher costs feed into the price of food and other goods. Jamie Brito is Executive Director for Refining and Oil Products at Chemical Market Analytics by Opis. He's based in Houston, Texas. I asked him about whether these higher oil prices are being felt throughout the US economy.
Immediately after the attacks took place on Saturday, some retail station chains in the US were already adjusting their prices for the consumer on Sunday. Of course, you would expect that you need to see that vessel that is not coming to the U.S. Gulf Coast 4, 5, 6 weeks from Saturday. No, you're supposed to wait for the supply chain to actually trickle down. But in modern times, when you have instant information, more technology, companies adjust their prices based on what they expect inventories are going to do in the next few weeks.
I mean, Jamie, we're just reading now, coming through on the wires, that, Singapore jet fuel, the prices have hit an all-time high as global supplies, concerns about restraints going forward. Do you see higher oil prices for some time to come? And if so, what impact will that have on this war and Trump's strategy?
It is all a function of the time it takes for any normalization of flows through Hormuz, of course. If you have, 1, 2 weeks lingering, then for sure it will have a gradual upside impact on prices. And the crack spreads or the prices on refined fuels from gasoline, diesel, jet fuel are usually more volatile. In the case specifically of jet fuel, inventories are more scattered, are lower than what you have normally for gasoline or diesel. So we would expect to see significant impacts on the aviation sector. And for sure, we were going to see higher crude prices in the next couple of weeks.
If Americans are paying high prices at the pump, that will cause a change, do you think?
In terms of the seasonality of prices, crude prices and gasoline prices were not supposed to increase until maybe the end of June towards the driving season. So what I'm saying is that this time is kind of a seasonal low demand moment. So that quote unquote is kind of a fortunate event for this development in terms of timing. But yeah, for sure, for instance, if a US consumer is paying 40, 50% higher prices for the next couple of weeks, this definitely will have a political price.
Well, I also talked to John Solvet, who is head of Middle East and North Africa at the global risk consultants Verisk Maplecroft. I asked him what he's advising his clients about risk at the moment.
Well, I think the first point is that the impact of this around the world, as we've just heard, is very extensive. And really, the key message that we're telling our clients is that the longer this conflict continues along this the same pattern that we've seen so far, the bigger the ramifications. And there's really a twofold challenge here. And a lot of this just boils down to essentially Iran's response to US and Israeli military operations. What we're seeing, of course, is that Iran is trying to impose a heavy and economic cost as possible on the US and on Israel and on the global economy. And what we're seeing specifically is drone and missile strikes. And there's really a twofold challenge to that. One, as we've just heard, the threat to shipping has meant that the flow of ships to and from the Persian Gulf has pretty much ground to a halt. And then secondly, we're seeing direct hits against very critical energy infrastructure, ports, industrial facilities. So these two things combined is really what is halting the flow of critical commodities from the region, things like oil and gas, but also other industrial chemicals, fertilizers. So it's a very long list of commodities that is being directly affected by that, and that is trickling down throughout the global economy.
When the US says, we're going to provide protection to shipping and even insurance, what's your take on that? Because many are questioning how that would work on a practical level and whether that will really change the minds of the big companies that would use this route to ship their goods.
Yeah, absolutely. And the key question at the moment is, details for these proposals. I think given the current crisis, any kind of proposed solutions are very much welcome, but time is very much of the essence here. And it's very unclear how these two proposals are going to work. And even if we were to move towards some sort of resolution, if we were to start to see a reduction in Iran's ability to launch missiles and drones, getting back to normal is going to take longer than what we've seen already